So far in this video series on Cubase AI and LE, we've looked at how easy it is to produce a track or create a track. Now it's time to add one of the most important elements, and that is a great vocal. So in this video, we're going to go and look at how easy it is to record a vocal and also use some tips and tricks to build that vocal and create harmonies so the vocal sounds absolutely huge over the top of the track. Let's bring Becky in and get her to record a great vocal.
The very first thing you need to do before you record an audio track is make sure everything is set up correctly. I'm just double checking under studio and audio connections that the Steinberg UR22 Mark II is specified as my input and output connection. Now it's a matter of creating a mono audio track because a microphone is only one channel. The final step in the software is to ensure that the channel is routed to the correct input. Now, the microphone's plugged into the left channel, so we're all good to go. If you're not using Steinberg hardware, which has direct monitoring, you might want to monitor the device using the software, in which case click on this button here to hear what you're recording via the software. Let's plug the condenser microphone that comes included in this pack into the first channel, which is the left channel on the hardware. The headphones are plugged into the phone slot, and now it's a matter of putting them on and setting your levels. You can monitor it directly from this hardware, so you can balance the level between your microphone and the actual track, and you can also set the microphone level. There'll be a peak light which will show you if it's too loud. Also make sure your headphones aren't too loud. Next, it's time to do a first take, and this first take is all about just getting comfortable with the track. Don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. Nobody ever does. And just a word of warning, I've never ever worked with a singer who's pitched everything perfectly the first time. So it's a matter of making sure the recording environment is right, the balance of all the sound is right for the vocalist, and most importantly, giving the vocalist time to settle in and figure out the phrasing and the melody. I've never come across anyone who's got it right the first time, be it phrasing, pitching, or timing. So the most important thing is to make sure you set aside enough time to capture the vocal that you want to record. A useful tool inside of Cubase is the ability to set up cycle points, so a left and right locator. So we can do a take which goes the whole way through, and then we can set up a cycle point which is cycling around the first verse. So this means that Becky is going to do the first verse over and over and over again. Not necessarily over and over and over again because, like I said, we don't want to wear her out, but do it 3 or 4 times. And once that's done, we can start to look at the different takes by clicking on this little button in the middle of the event. And we can see how the performance is evolving from take to take. This is a really useful way to be able to record vocals. It's an even handier tool when it comes to harmonies because it can often take a singer a while to pick a harmony and then settle on the actual harmony itself. You can also use the scale section of the chord track to come up with some harmonies. Essentially what we're doing here is singing the same harmony over and over and over again on one track, then moving to the next track and doing another harmony over and over and over again. The end result is a number of takes on each track. So we've got a lot to work with, and we're going to use this to really create stereo width in a moment. The final thing I usually do is go through and get a singer to sing line by line. So I record each phrase. So I've got a whole take of the whole song, I've got whole takes of each verse, I've got the harmonies, and then I've got each phrase a number of times line by line with maybe some different inflections or, different phrasing or different melodies. Now I can go through each part and I can select and preview each of the takes that we've done. The actual recording process has taken a couple of hours, and that's quite normal for a lead vocal. Now it's time to edit, and I've got the range tool, which you can get by hitting 2 on the computer keypad. You can also use the handles on the bottom left and right hand corner to adjust the start and end points, and you can put fades in and out of vocals, which helps remove any noise from the start and the end of a phrase. The range tool is fantastic for even removing breath marks in between different phrases. It depends on how hardcore you want to go, but in a lot of pop music, that's what they'll do. Now sometimes it can be hard to edit the vocals, and that's because the snap tool is on, which is snapping our edits to the grid. So take that off and you can freely move these parts from left to right. And it's a matter of feeling it and making sure you're not chopping off anything important, but at the same time, you're getting rid of any unwanted noise. That noise will come through when we start to add effects to these tracks. The next process is to treat the vocal track. So I'm loading up a track preset by clicking on Vocal and selecting a preset. It hasn't made any difference out in the project area, but if you go to the Insert tab, you can see that it's loaded 3 inserts or effects. We can open the effects and view them and edit the parameters, and we can turn them on and off using this button here. So you may not want a particular effect. You can also remove it just by going back to no effect. Now this is a Dynamics plugin. Dynamics help us control the loudness of our track. So we can use the presets for vocals to compress the track, and that'll just bring down the loudest points in our track, meaning we can raise the volume of the track up and have the vocals sitting up above everything else in our track. Compression is a key tool when it comes to mixing anything inside of your track. If you compress everything, you can get greater control and give it greater space come the mix. A reverb will give your vocal ambience, so it's going to give it space. It's going to make it sound like the vocal was recorded in a much bigger room. Next up, we've got our backing vocals, and I'm getting my range tool again, and I'm getting rid of these parts on the track that we don't need. Remember to put fades in and out. Now I'm loading a track preset again to make sure that these parts are compressed. Now for a little bit of magic. You can spend thousands of dollars on vocal plugins, but I want to show you a very quick and simple technique that you can use to get a huge vocal sound. I'm creating a number of tracks on this harmony, and I'm calling it Harmony 1.2. And watch what happens. Cubase adds harmony tracks 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Now I'm holding down Command and I'm dragging all of these takes down into these new tracks that I've created. Let's pan these vocals on each track from the left all the way over to the right hand side. Once we're done, let's have a listen. It sounds like the vocalist is standing all around me from the left to the right hand side singing that one harmony. So what we're doing is we're using width, and that's stereo width between the left and the right hand side of our mix. Let's do exactly the same thing for each one of these vocal tracks. Hold Command and move them down exactly in line with where they were sung. Vocal doubling is hardly a groundbreaking technique. It's been used for years. What is constantly evolving is what we do to these doubled tracks. I'm going to the plugins and I'm going to add the amp simulator to the vocal track, which is a little unusual. So it's probably a bit much, but the key is to blend it in with the vocals that we've got to help it pop through a little bit. The next thing I'm doing is adding a delay. Now with the delay, it's important to mess around with the parameters to make sure that the delay is not coming across and muddying the actual lyrics or the vocal line itself. Of course, a delay will move in sync with the actual track itself, so it can be a highly effective percussive tool to use over a lead vocal. Cubase comes with highly advanced automation features. Now I've got read and write on, and I'm recording all of the movements that I'm making in this delay parameter, which is really neat because it means that we can impact the delay when we need it to impact, and then we can remove it when we don't want it there. Once we've finished, we can go out and use our mouse to edit all of these automation points that we've created for precise control over exactly when and where we want this delay to happen. We're going to deal with this more in the mix video later on in the video series. Once again, thanks for joining in on this video. I hope you've learned something. If so, please like the video, subscribe to our channels for more videos like this, and stop by and leave us comments. I'm going to catch you in the next video in the series. See you then. I just can't believe.
Well, hello, happy Thursday. And I know, before you get mad, it's not the last Thursday of the month. I know. Here's the thing, when you work for a big company like Yamaha, as I do, you have holidays and you have to use them. And when you get an email from HR and they say, hey Brent, you have 16 holiday days that you have to use before the end of the month, you kind of have to use them. And so I'm going to be on holidays next week. So that's why we're here this week. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here a week early. Next month, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled program. Excited about some things that are happening in between. Many of you I know are already on our Yamaha Canada Solutions Facebook page, but if you are new here and you are not there, please come by and check it out. That's where you get all of the announcements about what we're doing, not only with Steinberg sessions, but with this other cool thing that we've started called Yamaha 440 sessions. And this is a new streaming series where we're bringing you musicians and the music and the tools, and it's all about music, less specs, more music. So we're pretty excited about that as well. So, oh, and by the way, the next Yamaha 440 sessions, Thursday, August 12th, it's kind of a big deal. We went to Budweiser stage and we did an interview with Josh Traeger, who's Sam Roberts' band drummer. So we'll have a little bit of footage from Budweiser stage, which was pretty awesome. And we'll also have Josh and his drums mic'd up live in studio at Yamaha Canada headquarters. So Thursday, August 12th, I hope that you'll join us for that. So a month ago, we started to talk about how to record and all the things that go along with the front end of the process. And I talked for a really long time. I promise you, I will not talk as long tonight. Tonight will be a little bit shorter, but it will still be chock full of info nonetheless. So tonight we're going to talk about, last time, if you haven't seen that one yet, check it out. We talked about recording guitars, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, which also works with bass and other stringed instruments. And we talked about microphones, and we talked about some modeled things. And I got a lot of great feedback on it. So tonight, we're going to just mention a couple of things like keyboards. We're going to talk about those really quickly because a lot of that stuff applies. But we're going to dig into vocals, which is kind of a big topic and kind of a big deal and kind of maybe for a lot of people the most important part of the production process. So we're going to talk about vocals. I have Siobhan with me. Let's check in with Siobhan. Hi, Siobhan. There she is. Okay, we'll come back for Siobhan in a second. But in any case, yeah, we're going to talk about vocals, and we've got a track here that Siobhan and I wrote with our buddy Rhino, who was in New York City. He just moved to Los Angeles, but he goes back and forth all the time. So we'll dig into that in a second. Before we do that, let's talk about keyboards. Now, keyboards, some people think, are the easiest thing in the world to record. And that's because if you go back to our last session, and I promise we won't talk about it quite as much as we did tonight, but if you go back and you look at the section about DI boxes, direct injection boxes, then that's the way a lot of people record keyboards. Now, the thing about it is that yes, that works and it works great, but don't be afraid to do this. Put a microphone, run it through an amp and put a microphone on a speaker, particularly if you're using electric pianos or organs or any of those sort of vintage sounds. Miking up a speaker can sound pretty cool, and it can actually help your keyboard parts blend with your guitar parts a little bit better. So check out last month if you need to review any of that stuff, but DIs are great for keyboards, and so are speakers, amplifiers and speakers, and it goes with the modelers and all that kind of stuff as well. So don't be afraid to plug your keyboard into a Helix or something like that. Okay, we're going to get to a couple of things that I've been asked about a million times since we started this thing. We're going to get to them tonight. One of those things is tempo. So the song that we have here, Siobhan and I wrote, and I have the little sketch that we did, and this was recorded on the phone, and I moved it in here. Let's hop over to the screen here. And okay, so here is the demo for the song, and I'll just play a little bit so you can check it out. Yeah. Okay, so you get the idea. But anyway, it's like usually when we record these little, I guess we call them demos. There's mistakes, and we're all still learning the song, and it's just to provide a reference for us. So, anyway, something I've been asked a number of times over many months is, how do we find the right tempo for the song? So the first thing I do is I play my little sketch demo that I have on the phone, and I go up to Project Beat Calculator, and then I can tap tempo. And so I just play the track, and I tap the tempo, and then it will tell me what the BPM is that's happening here. So let's play the track again. Yeah. Tap tempo, and now I just hit the space bar. Okay, so that has us just under 82 beats per minute, so around 80 or so. Now, when I listen to that little songwriting demo, it sounds a teeny bit slow to me. So when I'm trying to figure this out and I'm putting a scratch track down, I'll sort of try it at a bunch of different tempos. And my session is set up with the click, as you can see here, and this is in my template. So every time I boot up a new session, I have this click here. And so what we decided, we moved it around a little bit, and we decided that the place where it would sit is at 82, which you can see down at the bottom right here. And so we actually went ahead and we recorded this scratch guitar part at 82 BPM. Now, we didn't record that until we had settled on the tempo. And ironically, we've now decided it's still too slow, so we're going to speed it up. But for the purposes of tonight, we haven't done that yet because we're actually working on this song for Siobhan's upcoming EP. What do you have to say about that, Siobhan? Nice. Okay. So we're going to actually speed it up for the EP, but we did bump it a couple of beats per minute. So the next thing that we did is with the click is we played a scratch guitar track. And the idea here is to make the timing as accurate as possible and make sure the guitar is in tune. If I'm playing a guide piano part with a MIDI piano, most of the time I'll quantize it pretty heavily because I want the timing to be really precise so that when we put the guide vocal down, there's no, because, Siobhan and most singers are, they kind of go with the track. And so if there's sort of an ebb and flow in the track, then the singer will go with that, and then that impacts the rest of your production. So you want to try to make it so that your timing on your guide track is really, really precise. So here is the guide track, and actually Rhino, the guy that we wrote it with, he played this. So let's have a quick listen to that along with the click. Okay, so you get the idea. Now, Ryan is a particularly great rhythm guitar player, and his timing on this was phenomenal. But if he had played this and it was a little out of time, then I could go in and audio quantize it, and I probably would if it was a guide track. Now, for this, it wasn't necessary, so I left it exactly how he played it. But that is something that we can do, and I won't talk about how to do that tonight, but it's really easy, and if you guys want to hear me talk about that in a little more detail, send me an email, go on Yamaha Canada Solutions and leave me a message, and maybe we can get to that in a future episode. Okay, so we got to there with clicking guitar, and then we decided, wow, this is such a groovy tune. We kind of need a bit of a flammy, loose clap to go with this, because it'll help kind of set the vibe for the guide vocal. And so here's what we did. Okay, now you'll notice that that clap is super lazy behind the beat, and I just want to show you. It was actually a little audio clip that I grabbed. These were actually just like audio claps here that I took from a sample library. Then I placed them right to the grid, but then up here I delayed them. So the first one is delayed by 50, and the second one is delayed by 8. So that gives it that super lazy feel. Let's hear it one more time. Okay, I think we're ready to go on recording this guide vocal. Now, the other thing that I've mentioned in the past, for those of you that have been sticking around for a while, is try to record your guide vocal with the same chain that you're going to record your lead vocal later on with. And the reason why is because oftentimes you can get a really cool, inspired guide performance. And later on, when you redo the vocal, when you've got all the production flushed out and you're trying to re-record it and make it better than the guide, oftentimes there's something in the guide vocal that you want to keep. Now, if you recorded it with not a really great microphone or not a really great vocal chain, then you might have a hard time matching that guide vocal sound to your large diaphragm condenser, fancy outboard gear recording, and it may be challenging to get them to work together. So I have my situation set up here so that one channel is always devoted and ready for Siobhan to sing. I never touch any of the knobs unless I decide I can make it a little bit better, and it's just completely set up and ready to go all the time. So let's go back to this other screen and let's take a look. I know last time I actually went directly into the interface, but tonight I'm actually using all this fancy outboard gear that I have, and I'm set up. I'm using the UR24C. This is the interface that we're using tonight. And so what we have is, we'll go back to Siobhan for a sec. She's singing into a Mojave MA200. This is just a brilliant mic. I got pictures for you here. So that's what a Mojave MA200 looks like. I have the older version of it. They've changed the color of it a little bit. But this thing was kind of based on a U67. It's a tube mic. It really sounds fantastic, and I'd recommend that you check it out. Now, as you can see there, I've also got not just one, but two pop filters. One is the nylon one, and then I have one of the metal ones right behind it. And the reason I do that, I'm a little extreme in this case, and maybe it's a bit nerdy of me to do that, but the reason I have it is because I find that the fabric pop filter sort of takes out different pops and sounds than the metal one. And I find that whenever I use one or the other, I'm not getting enough pop reduction. So I find that the two of them works really well, and you can kind of see the distance there. It's just a few inches away. And where Siobhan is standing right now is kind of the optimal distance for her to sing from. Now, this is a very sensitive mic. The other thing that you may notice is that I don't have her singing directly into the capsule. She's a little bit off axis from the capsule, and that's by design. I do that on purpose. And the reason is because that will help you, in addition to the pop filters, it helps you avoid a lot of sort of ugly sort of popping and you know, basically vocal sounds that you don't want in your recording. You get a smoother sound if it's slightly off axis. There's also a trick where you can actually tape a pencil right to the grill on the microphone, and what happens is when the voice the plosives hit the pencil, they sort of split and they go away from the capsule. So that's also a neat trick, and it works really well. I've done that a bunch of times. The only other thing here, we have one of these surround kind of foamy things because I don't have a treated room here, and that just helps kind of keep the vocal sound a little deader behind the mic. And also, I always leave up there, I've got that little phone holder because everyone has their lyrics. I used to have a music stand, but these days everybody has lyrics on their phone or their tablets or whatever they may bring. And you can't see it down below, but I also have a headphone hook, which is a neat little tip. It's a good pro tip for those of you that oftentimes singers will take off the headphones, put them on the floor, and guess what happens? Somebody steps on them. And so you spend an awful lot of money replacing headphones, which I don't want to do. I've been through that many, many times. I had to replace headphones because someone stepped on them. So now I put a little hook on the mic stand, no more broken headphones. All right, let's go back to the rack here and we'll talk about the chain. So up at the top here, I have 2 API preamps, 2 API EQs, and then this is the AXR4, which I talked about last time. That's what we use to do the guitars. Tonight we're using this interface instead up here, the UR24C, but it lives here. Compressor, and tonight I only have 1 compressor plugged in. I often use 2 compressors for vocals, but for simplicity tonight we just use this one. And I'm trying to acquire a really cool, I'm saving my pennies for a really cool compressor that hopefully we'll have soon, which I'll show you when I get it, but I don't have it yet. I don't have enough money yet, but I'm getting there. And then down at the bottom I have a headphone box, which basically the headphone out from the interface goes into the headphone box, and then the headphone box goes to Siobhan so she can hear things on those amazing Steinberg headphones that she has there. So this is kind of the way it's set up. Right now I have the Mojave MA200 going straight into this first API preamp. Then it's going into this EQ here. And I'm not doing too much. I'm just like cutting a little mid, adding a little high, adding a little low. Like 2 decibels, not tons of anything. It's fine if you don't do any EQing. I just find that when I do a little bit here, it saves me having to do it with plugins later on. So I just sweeten it up a little bit here, and then that helps me later on in the mix. And then we're going into this Crane Song compressor down here, and if Siobhan sings a little bit, you'll see how much we're compressing here. Siobhan, can you talk or sing?
Sure. Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Okay, so you can hear you can see we've got, probably can't see the numbers, but we're getting 3 or 4 decibels of compression typically throughout the whole thing. Now if I added a second compressor, which I'm intending to do, as I said, very soon, I would maybe have 2 or 3 decibels of compression on that one, and then maybe another 2, 3, 4 on this one. This Crane Song compressor is very transparent, so you can compress quite a lot and you can't hear it very much. So, but yeah, don't be shy about compressing vocals going in, and if you don't do a bunch up front, you're going to end up probably doing a whole bunch later on when you're mixing. So that's the chain, and then it goes from the back of the Crane Song straight into the front, right in, it's like on a balanced quarter-inch here, like a TRS quarter-inch, straight into the front of the interface, and that's all that's happening. So, so that's where we're at with the chains. Pretty simple. There's not too much to it. Let's go into here, and let's bring Siobhan back in, and let's actually take a look at our level, the way that we want it to be. So this is a really amazing feature in Cubase, and I've really fallen in love with it. And it didn't show up all that long ago, so it's pretty fantastic. The nice thing here is that you can see your interface in the inspector here. So I've got it set up. Siobhan is going through input 1, and now I've got all this control here for the channel. So her microphone has a power box already, so I don't need phantom power. But you can see here my level, so I can set it right from within the project window. I don't even need to go over to the mixer and take a look at either the channel or the inputs over here. I don't even need to do that. I can stay right in the project window. So Siobhan, if you could sing one more time and we can take a look at the level here, that'd be great.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Okay, so perfect level. It's about 2/3 of the way up. Let's take a look over here one more time, Siobhan, and we'll take a look at it over here on the meters.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Okay, perfect. It's about 2/3 of the way up, and that's exactly where we want it. You know, it's the same as what we talked about in the last episode, where we're aiming for around -12, -10. That's exactly where we want to be on the meter. Okay, so that's pretty fantastic. Let's have Siobhan, let's record one here with Siobhan over the track, and let's just hear how that sits in the track. So put it back here at the beginning, and here we go.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars. You were the right one for a minute. Couldn't keep up but couldn't give it. All that you were asking was to be in my heart. This all got really cold. There ain't no us in growing old. Not with me. Shut up right now, you've gotta know that baby, that no, not mine. No, not mine.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So that's pretty typical of the kind of level that we want to see. And as you can see, the loud parts here, they don't ever really get close to the top. We're still only about 70% of the way up. So that's perfect. Now, a couple other things I want to point out over here. So I've turned on the high pass filter, which is pretty great. So we're getting rid of any low stuff that we don't need. Now, in the case of what I have here, I don't necessarily need to do that, because over here on my EQ, I have a high pass filter engaged as well. But I just wanted you to see that, just so that you were aware that you can do it here. Now, there's a couple other things, and pretty much every vocalist that you're going to work with is probably going to want to hear themselves through reverb. And the great thing is that we are direct monitoring tonight. You can tell that we've done that up here, and we have direct monitoring turned on. So we are direct monitoring. And here's the other thing. This doesn't work unless you have your control room. You have to have an output set. Okay, so a lot of times when we set up our inputs and outputs, sometimes we leave our outputs unassigned, and then instead we use the control room. If you want to be able to use the reverb you have to actually have it set for the outputs or you won't hear the reverb. So that's one little caveat here that nobody really talks about. So, so anyway, I have the output set up, and now all I have to do is turn up the send here. And Siobhan, if you could talk.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't save it.
Now that's pretty beautiful, very big. I can turn the send down and I can make it a little bit less, but I can also go and I can actually edit what's happening here. So maybe the reverb time is just a little bit too long, so I can turn that back. Okay, let's hear it again, Siobhan.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Now that sounds much better, and you've got all kinds of control here. Like right now we have it, the top end rolled off at 6.3. If I take that up, we can get it to be a really bright, sheeny reverb if you'd like. Okay, Siobhan?
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Okay, so pretty fantastic. And we also have other options over here. That's the hall reverb, which is my personal favorite, but some people prefer plates or rooms, and you select them here. So it's pretty fantastic. Let's try another take. And let's have Siobhan sing, but this time she'll be able to hear her voice through this reverb. Now the beautiful thing about it is it doesn't record, so it's only when we're monitoring. So let's try that again. Here we go.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars. You were the right one for a minute. Couldn't keep up, but couldn't give it. All that you were asking was to be in my heart. This all got really cold. There ain't no us in growing old. Now with me, shut up right now, you've gotta know that baby, that no, not mine, no, not mine.
Okay, so that's pretty great that you can record with this reverb that's there, and it doesn't record, it's only for monitoring. So if we play back this track and have a listen.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't say.
So it's pretty great that you can record, hear the reverb, you can set it up exactly the way that the vocalist wants to hear it, and then you can use your super fancy schmancy reverbs after the fact if you want to make the mix sound really, really special. So that's really cool. The other request I get an awful lot from vocalists when they're singing is, I want to either hear more bass in my voice, or I want to hear more of the trebly sort of stuff. I want to really hear my S's and all the sibilant things. And so what we can do is we can also, in the inserts here, we can add a morphing channel strip. And this has compression, and this has this EQ, and there's all kinds of things that we can do here. And it's really easy. All we have to do is just do this, and all of a sudden now we've got all kinds of EQ happening. And again, as long as this looks orange over here, it's not going to record. So Siobhan, I'll put you back in here. Can you speak and we'll hear what that's doing to your voice?
Hello.
So you can...
Boom.
Again?
Okay. Can I just sing?
Yeah, sing please.
Okay.
That's great.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up, but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars. You were the right one for a minute. Couldn't keep up, but couldn't give it. All that you were asking was to be in my heart.
Okay, so you can hear that it's pretty dramatic. You can do some pretty amazing things. And once again, if I record and I don't want to hear that in my final recording, it's only for monitoring purposes. So this is another amazing thing that works with our interfaces and you know, having them set up with these DSP mix effects. Now, there's a couple other things in here as well. We've got some guitar amps, these GA Classics, and not all the time you would want to use that for vocals, but certainly if you're doing something that requires a sort of a treated vocal sound, you could experiment with that. But that would be great if you were recording guitar and you wanted to. Remember last time we talked about the trick with editing the DI track. So what you could do is you could plug your guitar DI directly in, and you could set up in the monitoring, you could set up like an amp sound, and the player could hear like it sounds like an amp, but all you'd be recording is just the DI. So there's another little trick there. Now, what happens if we decide we really like this crazy EQ, or we really like this amp sound that we have, and we actually want to record it? We want to commit it to our track. No problem. We have this pre and post switch here, and when we switch it and it turns blue, now whatever my setting is there will go to the recorded track. And so when it's recorded, I will hear exactly what it is there. So just for fun and just to show you that, let's turn off this EQ and let's put a distortion on here. It's gonna sound a little crazy. That's pretty loud. Let's just turn it down a little bit. Okay. And Siobhan, are you getting the distortion in your voice there? Okay. Amazing. Let's try this recording and we'll have a listen to it. Here we go. Okay, let's turn it off here and let's have a listen to the track. I don't know, we might have a new production idea on this one. It's pretty cool, but anyway, so again, if you have it turned on, all you have to do is switch this pre and post switch. When it's orange, you're not gonna record it. When it's blue, you're gonna record it. So, just a little bit of a tip on how you can set up the sound so that the singer loves what they're hearing, but you don't necessarily have to record it. Now, ask me questions. I don't know, I haven't been paying any attention over here, but ask questions, and JG is with us again tonight, and she'll feed them to me if there is any. But in any case, another question that I got, which I think is an important thing to talk about as well, is, let's actually delete, well, yeah, let's delete the distorted vocal, is levels. And this isn't exactly a recording thing, but this impacts all the work that we do. And so I left it exposed at the bottom here, my meter, and I have my meter over here on the right on purpose, because I wanted to use this opportunity to talk a little bit about this fantastic metering that we have here built into Cubase. And there's all kinds of other options, but you can go an awful long way just with what we can see right here with the RMS max and the peak max. Now, we know with recording digitally, we never want to go above 0 dB full scale. That's at the very, very top, and anything past that is clipped. So we know that, and we know when we set up a limiter. Let's go back over to the mixer here. And when I set up a limiter on my 2 mix, which is right here, you've all seen this one before, I set my ceiling, I set it for minus 0.4. Some people set it for minus 0.3, some people set it for minus 0.2, some people set it for minus 0.1, some people leave it at 0. But I give myself just like almost a half dB of headroom at the top. So when I set my limiter for that, it doesn't matter how loud my track is, it's never going to go above the threshold that I sit there. So I can push up my volume as much or as little as I want, and it's never going to go above that minus 0.4. So the peak max really only tells us whether we're clipping or not. That's really the only thing it tells us, and it shows us how close we are to clipping. Now, because we're set up here to record and I don't have a lot of compression on the mix and there's not much happening, when I play the mix, you'll see that we're way down below 0. We're not even close.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Now, if I turn the limiter up, and I'm just going to turn the volume down so I don't kill you guys with level and it turns into a distorted mess. I'll turn the volume down on the UR24C. But if I turn this up, I'm going to turn it up all the way. And I'll adjust the volume as we go here. But you'll see that it never ever goes past the 0.4, even though it's going to be quite loud.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars.
Okay, so you can see that it's holding there at the peak max of minus 0.4. And so that's what the limiter is doing. Now, the question I was asked, which was sort of more complicated, it's not very complicated, but this person asked me, well, why is it that even though I'm hitting minus 0.4 on my 2 mix, my mix doesn't sound as loud as when I compare it to, you know, the tracks I'm listening to on Spotify or Apple Music or on a CD? And the reason is because that person was paying attention mostly to the peak max and thinking that as long as we went to the top, it was going to be loud. But really what we want to pay attention to with our overall loudness and how we perceive it as loud compared to other things is the average loudness, which is actually the RMS. And the RMS tells us a great deal. So if I have no limit, if I turn my limiter basically off, I have 0 gain here. And watch here what our RMS max is. So this is going to be much quieter. And you can even see it on the meters here. Now, if I turn up the gain until a point at which we even get to the minus 0.4, okay, so I've gained it up here by like about 11 dB here, and we hit the peak max of minus 0.4, but our RMS, or our average loudness, is at minus 17.4. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that we're several decibels lower than what a commercially released track would be. So if we have CDs and we're able to kind of watch meters and look at them, or if we download, you know, files and turn them into audio and we can look at meters, what you'll find if you look at commercially released tracks is that the RMS level of most of those tracks lives somewhere between RMS of -12 to -8. So in this case, as you can see, we've hit -0.4 at the top, but our average level is -17.4. And compared to the loudest tracks that we're gonna see that are released, we are, probably about 9 decibels below that. So even though we're hitting the top, our average level is way too low. So when you're mixing, what you want to try to do, if it's for a finished master and you want to hear it, or if you're just going to bounce a reference and you're going to compare it to a commercially released track, try to make sure that your RMS max gets up at least around -10. Because then when you compare it to another track, it will sound a lot more similar. So we've got about 11 decibels of gain here on the limiter. Let's gain it up and see, if we can get it close to -10. -8 is pretty loud. If you're making really heavy rock music, you probably want it at -8. But for a lot of stuff, -10 is pretty good. I just did a track and we sent it out for mastering with a mastering engineer, and it came back with an RMS of -9.7. So just to give you some perspective on that. So let's have a listen to this again, and I'm going to push this up. And you'll see we never go over -0.4, but the average level, the track will seem louder and louder and louder as we go. Here we go.
Love you was never gonna make it. Got a bit up but couldn't save it. Loving one another wasn't written in the stars. You were the right one for a minute. Couldn't keep up but couldn't give it up.
Okay, so as you can see, at 20 dBs of gain on the limiter, we got up to -8.6 on the RMS scale. So that actually, when we add 20 dBs on the limiter, we actually got pretty close to the level that I would expect the loudest commercially released CD to be. So that's interesting. So, and as you heard, as I turned it up, we still didn't go over -0.4 at the very top, but our average level got louder and louder and louder. Now, some of you may ask, well, what's the appropriate level that if I'm going to get my track mastered by somebody, what is the appropriate level to send to mastering? Well, first of all, you probably shouldn't have too much limiting, if any, on your mix when you send it to mastering. Like, I use these limiters for references when I give to the people that I'm working for, just so they can hear it. I always send them references that are at an RMS of around -10, just so that when they compare it to other things, they have a good frame of reference. But when I send it to a mastering engineer, I take the limiting off, and it won't be there. So then the level of my mixes that I'm sending tend to be, I use a lot of compression in my mixes, so my mixes tend to be an RMS of about -12, -14, maybe -16 if it's a softer song. And then I send that to mastering, and then the mastering engineer will take it up to that -10 or -8. So I hope that clears up a little bit of confusion surrounding levels. Now, I was determined to keep this session at about an hour, and we're 5 minutes away. JG has sent me, sorry, Jenny. JG has sent me some questions here. Do you have the DSP Mix FX Suite drivers installed? Yes, I do. And because I do this for Steinberg and Yamaha, I have the drivers and the DSP Mix FX suites for a whole bunch of interfaces, because my main interface I use for most of these sessions is the AXR4U, but for this tonight, I thought more of you would be more inclined, more likely to have something like the UR24C. So that's why we use that. I have all the, you know where I'm going with this, the UR RT2 and 4 drivers, and DSP mix effect, that's all that stuff is in here because I love those interfaces so much, and I do use them from time to time. And yeah, it's so I have a whole bunch of drivers. I do keep my drivers very up to date, and I do keep the software very up to date. There was a time in the past, and for those of you that used to come to these sessions live in person when we used to do them at our dealers, I would always tell you to stay one version behind. I have to say, lately I've been finding that I don't need to do that anymore. The latest versions are working really well, and eLicenser, the latest version, works really well. The drivers for the interfaces work really well, and also Cubase, Nuendo, and all the applications I use. The new versions have been really great lately. So I would do that. I wonder if there is any other questions. I don't think so. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. It's 7:58, so we're gonna meet that 1 hour thing. We'll be back. We're working on some guests for some future sessions, so we'll have guests again soon. I've been talking to a couple of people, and pretty excited about some guests, some new ones that we haven't met before, and some that we had an opportunity to meet in real life, but we haven't had a chance to bring on to the stream. So we'll have some of those folks. Please, 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 if you missed the Y440 session from last month, we had a little chat about Montage and ModiX keyboards, but there was also a little bit where I got into Cubase, and we talked a little bit about drums and using keyboards for processing, so I think it's relevant. And I really hope that you'll all tune in to our Y440 session on Thursday, August 12th, with Josh Traeger from Sam Roberts Band, because that's going to be amazing. I'm really excited about that. If you folks out there in Steinberg land would like me to talk about recording drums, we can do that, but I can't do it here because there's not enough space in my home studio. So send me an email if that is something that you would like to do, although we probably will talk a little bit about it at the August 12th Y440 session. So please come and check that out. For those of you that didn't notice, tonight was the first time ever that we simulcast not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook. So as I've been promising all along, we're trying to bring you guys new, better sessions with more accessibility and better quality and all those things. So for those of you that missed it on YouTube, you can check it out on Facebook. So at Yamaha Canada, on the Yamaha Canada page. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm on vacation, and we'll see you Thursday, August 12th. And if not, we'll see you at the Steinberg sessions after that. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next time.